What if the penny sitting quietly in your drawer right now could be worth far more than 1 cent? Not because it looks different at first glance, but because of a tiny letter stamped beneath the date, a single D that tells a story most people never notice. Today, we're talking about the 1964 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that millions of Americans have seen, but very few truly understand. It may look ordinary, but hidden within its copper surface are details, variations, and rare possibilities that continue to attract collectors even decades later. The 1964 Lincoln penny was part of one of the most heavily produced coin years in United States history. This was a time when the country was dealing with a coin shortage. People were hoarding silver coins, and the government needed to keep money flowing through everyday transactions. To solve this, the U.S. Mint dramatically increased production. The D Mint mark on this penny tells us it was struck at the Denver Mint. In 1964 alone, the Denver Mint produced over 3.7 billion Lincoln pennies. That number is massive, and at first, it might make you think this coin could never be valuable. After all, how can something made in the billions be rare? But that's where the story gets interesting. Even though millions were made, not all 1964 D pennies are the same. Small differences, tiny errors, and condition levels can completely change the value of this coin. And for collectors, those differences are everything. Let's take a closer look at the coin itself. On the front, or obverse, you'll see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, facing to the right. This design was created by Victor David Brenner and has been a part of American coins since 1909. Above Lincoln's head, you'll find the word Liberty, and to the right, the date 1964. Just below the date is the small but important D Mint mark on the back, or reverse. You'll see two wheat ears framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. This is known as the wheat penny design, which was used from 1909 to 1958. But wait, if the wheat design ended in 1958, why does the 1964 penny have a different reverse? That's because by 1964, the reverse had already changed to the Lincoln Memorial design. This newer design shows the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., with tiny details that even include a miniature Lincoln statue inside the building. It's a subtle detail that many people miss unless they look very closely. The coin itself is made primarily of copper, about 95%, with a small amount of tin and zinc. This gives it that rich, reddish-brown color when it's new. Over time, depending on how it's stored and handled, the color can shift from bright red to brown or a mix of both. Now here's where things start to get exciting. Even though billions of these coins exist, collectors are not just looking for any 1964 D penny. They are searching for specific versions, especially those with minting errors or those in near-perfect condition. One of the most talked about features in coins like this is the possibility of a double die error. This happens when the design is accidentally stamped twice in slightly different positions, creating a shadow-like effect on letters or numbers. On a 1964 D penny, this could appear in the date or the word Liberty. While not extremely common, when such an error is found, it can significantly increase the coin's value. Another interesting variation comes from repunched mint marks. In earlier minting processes, mint marks were added manually. Sometimes the D was struck more than once, slightly off from the first position. This creates a layered or doubled appearance. To an untrained eye, it might look like a simple flaw, but to a collector, it's a hidden treasure. Condition is another major factor. A worn 1964 D penny that has been in circulation for decades might only be worth a few cents. But a coin that has never been circulated, often called mint state, can be worth much more. The difference between a scratched, faded penny and a sharp, glossy one can mean the difference between 1 cent and several $100s. In fact, some high-grade 1964 D pennies have sold for impressive amounts at auction. Coins graded at the highest levels, with bright red surfaces and no visible marks, have reached prices of hundreds, sometimes even over $1,000. These are rare not because of how many were made, but because of how few survived in perfect condition. Collectors often look for coins labeled as MS-65 or higher. These grading terms come from professional coin grading services that evaluate the quality of a coin based on strict standards. The higher the grade, the more valuable the coin becomes. So how can you tell if you have a valuable 1964 D penny? Start by checking the date and mint mark. Look closely under the 1964 for the small d. Next, examine the surface. Is it shiny and smooth or dull and worn? Look for unusual details like doubling in the letters or numbers, or a mint mark that looks slightly off. Lighting is important. Sometimes, tilting the coin under a light can reveal details that aren't visible at first glance. A magnifying glass or a simple coin loop can also help you spot small features that might otherwise go unnoticed. But be careful. There are also altered coins out there. Some people try to add fake mint marks or modify coins to make them appear more valuable. A genuine 1964 D penny will have a mint mark that looks natural and blends smoothly with the surface of the coin. If something looks too perfect or too strange, it's worth getting a second opinion. One of the safest ways to confirm authenticity is to have the coin evaluated by a professional grading service. These organizations can verify whether your coin is real, identify any errors, and assign a grade that reflects its condition. Now here's a fun detail that surprises many people. Because 1964 was such a high production year, it marked the end of an era in some ways. Just a year later, in 1965, the U.S. Mint removed mint marks entirely for a short period to discourage coin hoarding. That makes the 1964 D one of the last pennies of its time to clearly display where it was made. Another interesting fact is that while this coin isn't made of silver, its copper content has intrinsic value. Over time, as metal prices change, even the raw material in older pennies can become more valuable than their face value. However, laws prevent melting down pennies for profit, so their true value remains in collecting rather than metal. Collectors love the 1964 D Lincoln penny not because it is rare in general, but because it represents a perfect combination of history, accessibility, and hidden potential. It's a coin that almost anyone can find, yet still offers the thrill of discovery. Imagine going through a jar of old coins and suddenly spotting one that looks just a little different. Maybe the color is brighter. Maybe the letters seem slightly doubled. That moment of curiosity is what drives collectors. It's the idea that something small and overlooked could hold unexpected value. And that's the real magic of coins like this. They connect everyday people to history. This penny may have passed through countless hands, been used in stores, dropped in jars, or forgotten in drawers. Yet it still carries the story of a specific time in American history, a moment when the country was adapting to change and producing coins at an incredible pace. Today, decades later, that same coin can still spark excitement, so the next time you come across a 1964 D Lincoln penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Turn it under the light. Check the details. Because while most of these pennies are worth just a cent, a small number holds something more, a detail, an error, or a level of preservation that transforms them into something truly special. And who knows, the next valuable coin might not come from a rare collection or an expensive purchase. It might already be in your pocket, waiting for you to notice what everyone else has missed. Imagine holding a tiny copper coin in your hand, a coin so ordinary that most people would never look at it twice. Yet hidden within it could be a detail so rare, so overlooked that collectors have paid thousands of dollars just to own one. What if that coin was a 1968 Lincoln penny? And what if the one in your pocket was worth far more than 1 cent? The 1968 Mint Mark Lincoln penny is one of those coins that quietly sits in collections, jars, and forgotten drawers, waiting for someone to notice its story. At first glance, it looks like any other penny. It features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front, a design Americans have seen for generations. But this specific coin carries a small letter that changes everything. Just beneath the date, you'll find the letter S, marking its origin from the San Francisco Mint. To understand why this coin matters, we need to go back to 1968. The United States was going through a time of change. The country had recently removed silver from most circulating coins due to rising metal costs, and the minting system was evolving. For several years before 1968, mint marks were removed from coins entirely to discourage hoarding. But in 1968, mint marks returned, and collectors paid close attention. That's where the 1968 penny enters the story. Unlike pennies made in Philadelphia, which had no mint mark, or Denver coins marked with a D, the San Francisco Mint produced coins primarily for collectors. These were not meant to flood everyday circulation. Instead, Many were struck as proof coins, specially made with extra care, polished dies, and sharper details. This makes the 1968 penny particularly interesting. There are actually two main types. One is the regular circulation strike, and the other is the proof version. The proof coins are especially important because they were the first proof coins made in San Francisco after production resumed there for collectors. Now, let's talk about what makes this coin unique. The 1968 Lincoln penny is made primarily of copper, about 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. It has that classic reddish tone when well preserved, although many have darkened over time. On the front, Lincoln's profile faces right, calm and steady. Above his head, you'll see "In God We Trust." To the left, the word Liberty. And below, the date 1968 with the small S mint mark on the back. You'll find the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny representation of Lincoln's statue inside the memorial. It's a small detail that many people miss, but it shows the level of craftsmanship that went into even everyday coins. But here's where things get more exciting. Not all 1968 pennies are the same. Some have errors or unusual characteristics that can dramatically increase their value. One of the most talked about features is the proof finish. Proof coins have a mirror-like background and frosted details, giving them a sharp, almost glowing appearance. However, not all proof coins are perfect. Some have what collectors call cameo, or even deep cameo contrast, where the portrait stands out boldly against a reflective surface. These are highly sought after because they are less common. There are also error coins. Occasionally, coins were struck with double dies, where the design appears slightly duplicated. In other cases, the mint mark itself may appear repunched or misaligned. These small differences can turn an ordinary-looking penny into something collectors actively hunt for. So why is the 1968 penny valuable? The answer lies in a combination of condition, rarity, and demand. While millions of these coins were made, very few remain in perfect condition. Coins that have been handled, scratched, or circulated lose much of their value. But coins that have been preserved carefully, especially proof coins kept in original sets, can be worth significantly more. For example, a typical circulated 1968 penny might only be worth a few cents. But a proof coin in excellent condition can sell for several dollars. And if you find one with a deep cameo finish in near-perfect grade, it can reach into the hundreds. There have even been auction cases where high-grade examples, graded by professional services, have sold for impressive amounts. Coins graded at the very top levels, such as PR69 or PR70, are extremely rare. Collectors are willing to pay a premium for these because they represent the best possible preservation of the coin. Imagine that, a 1-cent coin worth hundreds of dollars simply because it survived in pristine condition for decades. But how can you tell if your 1968 penny is real or valuable? First, look closely at the mint mark. It should be a clear, well-defined S just below the date. If it looks blurry or oddly shaped, it could be damaged or even altered. Next, examine the surface. Proof coins will have a shiny, mirror-like background. If your coin looks dull or worn, it's likely a regular circulation strike. Also, check for sharp details. Lincoln's hair, the lettering, and the Lincoln Memorial should all appear crisp on a high-quality coin. Weight is another clue. A genuine 1968 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If it's significantly off, it might not be authentic. And while counterfeiting pennies is rare, altered coins do exist, especially when people try to add fake mint marks to increase value. One of the best ways to confirm authenticity is to have the coin graded by a professional service. These organizations examine the coin carefully, assign it a grade, and seal it in a protective holder. This not only confirms authenticity but also makes it easier to sell. Now here's something many people don't realize. The 1968 penny represents a turning point in U.S. coin production. It marked the return of mint marks after a brief absence, and it helped re-establish the San Francisco Mint as a key location for proof coin production. That alone gives it historical significance beyond its face value. Another interesting detail is how many of these coins were originally sold in proof sets. These sets were often kept as souvenirs or gifts, meaning some coins have remained untouched for decades. Every year, collectors still open old proof sets hoping to find a perfectly preserved coin with strong cameo contrast. And then there's the emotional side of collecting. Coins like the 1968 penny connect people to history. They remind us of a different era, a time when coins were still made mostly of copper and carried a sense of craftsmanship that many feel is missing today. Collectors love this coin not just for its potential value, but for what it represents. It's a piece of American history, a symbol of change, and a reminder that even the smallest objects can hold stories worth telling. Think about it. How many pennies have passed through your hands without a second thought? How many times have you ignored a coin because it seemed too ordinary? And yet, hidden among millions of similar coins, there could be one with a detail that makes it special. That's the beauty of coin collecting. It turns everyday objects into discoveries. It teaches patience, attention to detail, and the thrill of finding something rare where others see nothing at all. So the next time you come across a penny, take a closer look. Check the date. Look for that small S mint mark. Examine the shine, the details, the condition, because you never know. That tiny piece of copper could be more than just spare change. It could be a 1968 Lincoln penny, quietly waiting to reveal its true value. What if the small copper coin sitting unnoticed in your pocket right now could be worth far more than 1 cent? Not because it's ancient, not because it's made of gold, but because of a tiny detail most people never even think to check. Today, we're talking about the 1970 Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary at first glance, yet hides a story that has captured the attention of collectors for decades. The 1970 Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced in 1970 at the Denver Mint, which is why you'll see a small D mint mark just below the date on the front. Like all Lincoln pennies of its time, it features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, a design that has been part of American coinage since 1909. On the reverse, you'll find the classic wheat-free design introduced in 1959, showing the Lincoln Memorial, a symbol recognized across the United States at first glance. There's nothing particularly unusual about this coin. Millions were made. In fact, the United States Mint struck over 2.8 billion of these pennies at the Denver facility alone. That number suggests abundance, not rarity. And yet, among those billions, a small number carry subtle differences that turn them into something extraordinary. To understand why this coin exists, we need to step back into the late 1960s and early 1970s. The United States was going through a period of economic change. Inflation was beginning to rise, and the cost of producing coins was becoming a real concern. Just a few years earlier, in 1962, pennies were still made primarily of copper, and that composition continued into 1970. Each coin contained 95% copper and 5% zinc, giving it that warm reddish-brown tone many collectors love today. The Lincoln Memorial design on the reverse had been introduced just over a decade earlier, replacing the wheat ears that had been on the coin since 1909. This newer design was meant to honor Lincoln not just as a president, but as a symbol of unity and resilience. By 1970, it had become a familiar part of everyday American life, passing from hand to hand without much thought. But here's where the story becomes interesting. Not all 1970 pennies are the same. Some were struck using different die varieties, meaning the tools used to stamp the design onto the coin had slight variations. These differences are often invisible to the untrained eye, but to collectors, they are everything. One of the most talked about varieties is the small date versus large date difference. While this is more commonly associated with the Philadelphia Mint coins of 1970, subtle variations in Denver coins have also been studied. The shape of the numbers, the spacing, and even the thickness of the lettering can reveal whether a coin is more common or potentially more desirable. Then there are die errors. These happen during the minting process when something goes slightly wrong. For example, a die might become worn or damaged, leading to coins with doubled letters, shifted images, or unusual textures. A double die error, where parts of the design appear duplicated, is especially valuable because it's both rare and visually striking. Imagine holding a penny where the word Liberty appears slightly doubled, or where the date seems to have a shadow. To most people, it might look like a flaw. To a collector, it could mean the difference between 1 cent and hundreds of dollars. Condition also plays a huge role in value. A 1970 penny that has been circulating for decades will likely show signs of wear. The details may be faded, the surface scratched, and the original shine long gone. But if you find one in near-perfect condition, something collectors call mint state, its value increases dramatically. There have been real examples of 1970 pennies selling for impressive amounts. A typical circulated coin might only be worth a few cents. But uncirculated examples with strong luster can sell for several dollars, sometimes even more depending on grading. And when you add a rare error into the mix, prices can climb into the hundreds. For instance, certain high-grade 1970 pennies with exceptional preservation have been auctioned for over $50 to $100. That may not sound life-changing, but for a coin originally worth 1 cent, it's a remarkable increase. And in rare cases involving significant mint errors, collectors have paid even higher prices. So how can you tell if you have one of these valuable coins? The first step is to check the mint mark. Look just below the date on the front of the coin. If you see a small D, you know it was minted in Denver. Next, examine the date itself. Compare the shape of the numbers to known examples online. Are the digits thin or thick? Are they evenly spaced? Then, take a closer look at the lettering. Use a magnifying glass if possible. Check for doubling in words like liberty and in God we trust. Also inspect the reverse side. Look at the Lincoln Memorial and see if any details appear doubled or misaligned. Another important factor is weight and composition. A genuine 1970 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If it feels significantly lighter or heavier, that could be a sign of alteration or a counterfeit. While fake pennies are not extremely common, valuable varieties can attract attention, so it's always wise to be cautious. Color can also tell you something about the coin's condition. Collectors often categorize pennies as red, red-brown, or brown. A bright red coin with minimal oxidation is usually more valuable than one that has darkened over time. That original copper shine is something collectors actively seek. Here's a surprising detail many people don't know. Even though billions of these coins were made, finding one in perfect condition today is not easy. Most were used in everyday transactions, tossed into jars, or lost over time. That means truly pristine examples are much rarer than the original mintage numbers suggest. Another fun fact is that pennies from this era are among the last to contain such a high percentage of copper. In 1982, the composition changed to mostly zinc due to rising copper prices. This makes older pennies like the 1970 not just collectible, but also part of a broader story about economic change in the United States. Collectors love the 1970 Lincoln penny for several reasons. It represents a time when coins were still made with traditional materials. It offers the excitement of hunting for subtle varieties and errors. And it's accessible. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars to start collecting. Sometimes, all it takes is a careful look at your spare change. There's also a sense of discovery. Unlike rare gold coins locked away in vaults, this is a coin that could still be found in circulation, in an old coin jar, or tucked away in a forgotten drawer. That possibility keeps collectors searching, examining, and learning. And that's really what makes this coin special. It's not just about money. It's about the idea that something small and overlooked can hold hidden value. It's about paying attention to details most people ignore. And it's about the thrill of finding something unexpected, so the next time you come across a penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Check the date. Look for that small D. Examine the details. Because somewhere among the billions of coins produced in 1970, a few stand out. A few tell a different story. And who knows, the next one you find might just be more than a penny. It might be a piece of history, a collector's treasure, or the start of a journey into a world where even the smallest things can hold incredible value. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and unknowingly holding something that could be worth far more than 1 cent. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary, and yet, hidden within that tiny piece of copper could be a story that most people never even notice. Today, we're uncovering the truth about the 1975 no-mint mark Lincoln penny. a coin that quietly circulates through everyday life while collectors keep a very close eye on it. The 1975 Lincoln penny is part of one of the longest-running coin series in American history. First introduced in 1909, the Lincoln cent was created to honor President Abraham Lincoln, becoming the first U.S. coin to feature a real person. By 1975, this coin had already been in circulation for more than 6 decades, and millions of people handled it daily without a second thought. When we talk about a no-mint mark penny from 1975, we're referring to coins that were struck in Philadelphia. During that time, the Philadelphia Mint did not use a mint mark on pennies, which means these coins appear blank under the date. Unlike coins from Denver, which carry a small D, or San Francisco, which often used an S, the Philadelphia coins of that era remained unmarked. So technically, most 1975 pennies you'll find are no mint mark coins. Now you might be wondering, if so many of these coins were made, what makes any of them special? The answer lies in the details. While the majority of 1975 no mint mark pennies are common, certain variations, conditions, and rare errors can turn an ordinary coin into something collectors actively search for. It's not just about the year or the lack of a mint mark. It's about what happened during the minting process and how well the coin has survived over time. Let's take a closer look at the coin itself. The front, or obverse, features Abraham Lincoln's profile, designed by Victor David Brenner. You'll see the word Liberty to the left, the year 1975 to the right, and the phrase "In God We Trust" along the top. On the back, or reverse, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, which was introduced in 1959 to celebrate Lincoln's 150th birthday. If you look closely, you can even spot a tiny representation of the Lincoln statue inside the memorial. The coin is made primarily of copper, with a composition of 95% copper and 5% zinc. This gives it that classic reddish-brown color, although over time, many of these pennies darken due to oxidation. A freshly minted version would have had a bright, almost glowing appearance, something collectors refer to as red condition. But here's where things start to get interesting. Even though billions of 1975 pennies were produced, only a very small number exist in pristine condition today. Most have been scratched, worn down, or damaged after decades of circulation. Coins that remain in uncirculated condition, especially those with full original luster, are much harder to find. And in the world of coin collecting, condition is everything. Then there are mint errors. Mint errors are what truly transform a common coin into something rare and valuable. These can include double dies, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and even coins struck on the wrong metal. While no major widespread error defines the 1975 no mint mark penny, collectors have discovered small batches of coins with unusual characteristics. Some show slight doubling in the lettering, while others have striking flaws that make them stand out. These errors are not always obvious at first glance. Sometimes it takes a magnifying glass or a trained eye to notice them. But once identified, they can significantly increase the coin's value. So how much are we really talking about? In average circulated condition, a 1975 no mint mark penny is typically worth just a few cents. But when you move into higher grades, the value begins to climb. Uncirculated coins with strong red color can sell for several dollars, sometimes even reaching $20 to $50 depending on their quality. Now here's where it gets exciting. High-grade examples that have been professionally graded can sell for much more. Coins graded at the very top of the scale, often referred to as MS-65 or higher, have been known to reach into the hundreds. And if a rare error is involved, the price can go even higher. There have been auction listings where exceptional 1975 pennies, especially those with unique features or near-perfect condition, have surprised collectors with their final sale prices. While they may not reach the headline-grabbing millions of some rare coins, they still represent a fascinating opportunity hidden in everyday change. But how can you tell if you have one of these valuable coins? Start by checking the date. Look for 1975, and then examine the area just below it. If there's no mint mark, you're looking at a Philadelphia coin. Next, pay attention to the color. A bright, reddish tone usually indicates a coin that hasn't been heavily circulated. Brown or dark coins are more common and typically less valuable. After that, inspect the details. Look closely at the lettering and Lincoln's profile. Are the edges sharp? Is there any unusual doubling or distortion? Even small differences can make a big impact. Weight can also be a clue. A standard 1975 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If your coin feels off or weighs differently, it might be worth investigating further. And perhaps most importantly, consider getting the coin professionally graded if you believe it might be special. Third-party grading services can confirm authenticity, assign a condition grade, and significantly increase the coin's credibility in the collector market. There are also a few fun and surprising details about this coin that many people don't know. For example, the Lincoln Memorial design on the reverse was one of the first times a real building appeared on a U.S. coin. Even more interesting, it's one of the few coins where you can see the same person on both sides. Lincoln appears on the front, and his statue is visible inside the memorial on the back. Another fascinating detail is how these coins have traveled. A single 1975 penny could have passed through thousands of hands over the decades, moving from city to city, state to state, and even across the world. Each scratch and mark tells part of its journey. Collectors love the 1975 no-mint mark penny not because it's the rarest coin ever made, but because it represents possibility. It's a reminder that value isn't always obvious. Sometimes, it's hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to take a closer look. For beginners, it's an accessible entry point into coin collecting. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars to start searching. You just need curiosity, patience, and a willingness to learn. And for experienced collectors, it offers the thrill of the hunt, the chance to discover that one coin that stands out from the rest. So the next time you come across a penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a moment, look at the date, check for that missing mint mark, examine the details, because that small, seemingly insignificant coin might carry more value than you ever expected. And who knows, the next time you reach into your pocket, you might not just find spare change. You might find a piece of history quietly waiting to be discovered. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a single penny, and unknowingly holding a small piece of history that could be worth far more than 1 cent. Most people would spend it without a second thought. But what if that ordinary-looking coin carried hidden details, subtle differences, or even rare errors that collectors are actively searching for today? Today, we're taking a closer look at the 1985 D Lincoln penny, a coin that at first glance seems incredibly common, yet holds a fascinating story beneath its copper-colored surface. The 1985 D Lincoln penny was minted in Denver, which is what the small D mint mark on the coin represents. This coin is part of the long-running Lincoln Cent series that began back in 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln. By 1985, the Lincoln penny had already become one of the most recognized coins in American history, found in nearly every pocket, jar, and cash register across the country to end 1985. The United States Mint produced billions of pennies, and a large portion of them came from the Denver Mint. These coins were made during a time when inflation had already reduced the purchasing power of a penny. Yet the coin itself remained an essential part of daily transactions. It was a period when the penny wasn't just currency, it was tradition. Now here's where things get interesting. Even though the 1985 D penny was produced in huge numbers, not all of them are equal. In fact, some of these coins can be worth far more than their face value, depending on a few key factors. Let's start with the composition. The 1985 Lincoln penny is made mostly of zinc, with a thin copper plating on the outside. This change in metal composition actually happened a few years earlier, in 1982, when the U.S. Mint switched from solid copper pennies to zinc-based ones due to rising copper costs. So while the coin looks like it's made of copper, it's actually much lighter and more fragile underneath. The design of the coin remains classic and instantly recognizable. On the front, you'll see the profile of Abraham Lincoln, facing right, along with the words, "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the year 1985. Just beneath the year, you'll find the small D mint mark, indicating it was struck in Denver. On the back, the coin features the Lincoln Memorial, a design that was used from 1959 until 2008. If you look closely at the reverse, you can even see a tiny representation of Lincoln's statue inside the memorial, one of the smallest detailed portraits ever placed on a U.S. coin. But what really excites collectors are the small variations and errors that can turn an ordinary penny into something special. One of the most sought-after features in a 1985 D penny is a strong, well-defined strike. Coins that were struck with extra clarity, showing sharp details in Lincoln's hair and the Lincoln Memorial, are more desirable. These are often found in higher grades, meaning they've been preserved in near-perfect condition. Then there are error coins. While they are not extremely common, they do exist, and when they appear, they can significantly increase the value of the coin. Some collectors have reported off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned, or double die errors, where certain parts of the design appear slightly doubled due to a misalignment during the minting process. Even small details like a slightly rotated die or uneven copper plating can make a coin stand out. These imperfections might seem like flaws, but in the world of coin collecting, they can actually make a coin more valuable. So how much is a 1985 D Lincoln penny really worth? In most cases, if you find one in your pocket change, it's worth exactly 1 cent. But if the coin is in uncirculated condition, meaning it was never used in everyday transactions, it can be worth anywhere from a few cents to a few dollars. However, high-grade examples, especially those graded by professional coin grading services, can sell for much more. Coins in near-perfect condition, often labeled as MS65 or higher, have been known to sell for $10, $20, or even more depending on their quality. And if you happen to find one with a rare error, the value can increase dramatically. Some error coins from the 1980s have sold for hundreds of dollars at auction, simply because of their uniqueness and collector demand. Now you might be wondering, how can you tell if your 1985 D penny is valuable or just another common coin? First, take a close look at the condition. Is the coin shiny? Are the details sharp? Can you clearly see Lincoln's hair and the lines on the memorial? Coins with less wear are always more desirable. Next, check for errors. Look closely at the lettering and numbers. Do you see any doubling? Is the design slightly off-center? Does anything look unusual or different from a normal penny? Even small differences can make a big impact. Another important step is to weigh the coin. A standard 1985 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it's significantly different, it could indicate a minting anomaly, which might be worth investigating further. Also, be cautious of fakes. While the 1985 D penny is not one of the most commonly counterfeited coins, altered coins do exist. Some people attempt to modify dates or mint marks to make a coin appear more valuable. Always compare your coin with verified examples, and if you think you have something special, consider having it evaluated by a professional. Here's a fun fact that surprises many people. Even though billions of 1985 pennies were made, only a tiny fraction of them remain in perfect condition today. Most have been scratched, worn down, or lost over time. That means the number of truly high-quality examples is much smaller than you might expect. Another interesting detail is that the Lincoln Memorial design on the back of the coin was eventually replaced in 2009, marking the end of an era. This means that coins like the 1985 D penny are part of a historic design series that is no longer being produced. Collectors love this coin not because it's the rarest, but because it represents a time when everyday currency still carried deep historical significance. It's a reminder that even the smallest coin can connect us to a larger story. There's also something deeply satisfying about searching through pocket change or old coin jars and discovering a hidden gem. It's like a treasure hunt where the reward isn't just money, but knowledge and excitement. For many collectors, the 1985 D penny is a starting point. It's accessible, easy to find, and full of learning opportunities. It teaches you how to observe details, understand grading, and recognize what makes a coin valuable. And sometimes that journey leads to unexpected discoveries. A single penny can spark a lifelong passion, so the next time you come across a 1985 D Lincoln penny, don't rush to spend it. Take a closer look. Examine the details. Ask yourself if there's something unique about it. Because hidden in plain sight among billions of ordinary coins, there's always the possibility that one stands apart. And who knows, the next time you check your spare change, you might just find a small piece of history waiting to be discovered. What if the penny sitting quietly in your pocket right now, the one you almost ignored, could actually tell a story of American history, mass production, and hidden collector value? And what if that simple coin, dated 1988 with no mint mark, is more interesting than it first appears? Today, we're taking a closer look at the 1988 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that millions of people have seen, but very few have truly understood. At first glance, it looks completely ordinary. It's small, copper-colored, and carries the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln. But like many coins in U.S. history, its real value lies beneath the surface. The 1988 penny is part of the long-running Lincoln Cent series, one of the most recognizable coins ever produced in the United States. First introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln, this design has remained a constant presence in American life for over a century. By 1988, the coin had already gone through decades of changes, both in design and in composition. Now, when we say no mint mark, it often causes confusion. Many people assume that means the coin is rare or unusual, but in this case, it simply means the coin was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. For many years, the Philadelphia Mint did not include a mint mark on pennies, making no mint mark coins very common. In 1988, billions of Lincoln pennies were struck, and a large portion of them came from Philadelphia without any mint mark. So, on the surface, this coin is not rare at all. In fact, it's one of the most widely circulated coins of its time. But here's where things get interesting. Even though most 1988 no mint mark pennies are common, certain variations and errors within this year have captured the attention of collectors. And these small differences can mean the difference between a coin worth 1 cent and a coin worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. To understand why, we need to look at the details. The 1988 Lincoln penny features the portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front, designed by Victor David Brenner. You'll see the word Liberty to the left, the year 1988 to the right, and the phrase "In God We Trust" along the top. On the back, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, a design that was used from 1959 until 2008. But the real story lies in the metal and the minting process. By 1988, pennies were no longer made primarily of copper. In 1982, the U.S. Mint changed the composition due to rising copper prices. Pennies were now made mostly of zinc, with a thin copper coating. This made them lighter and cheaper to produce. However, with any large-scale production, mistakes can happen. One of the most talked about variations in the 1988 penny series is something collectors call a transitional design error. This involves the reverse side of the coin, specifically the design details of the Lincoln Memorial. In 1989, the U.S. Mint slightly modified the design of the reverse, making small but noticeable changes to the lettering and details. But in rare cases, some 1988 pennies were struck using the newer 1989 reverse design. These coins are known as 1988 pennies with a 1989 reverse. This might sound like a small difference, but for collectors, it's a big deal. Why? Because it represents a mistake in the minting process. It shows that a die intended for a future year was accidentally used earlier than it should have been. And in the world of coin collecting, errors like this are highly desirable. Most people would never notice the difference. It requires a careful eye and sometimes magnification to spot. But collectors actively search for these variations, and when they find them, the value can increase dramatically. So how valuable are we talking? A regular 1988 no mint mark penny in circulated condition is usually worth just 1 cent. Even in uncirculated condition, it might only be worth a few cents to $1. But if you have a confirmed 1988 penny with the 1989 reverse design, the story changes completely. Some of these rare error coins have sold for hundreds of dollars, and in top condition even more. Certified examples graded by professional services have reached values that surprise even experienced collectors. And that's what makes this coin so fascinating. It reminds us that value isn't always obvious. Sometimes the smallest details can transform something ordinary into something extraordinary. Now, if you're wondering how to tell if your 1988 penny is one of these rare varieties, here's what you need to look for. Focus on the lettering on the reverse side of the coin, especially the word America. On the 1989 reverse, the letters have a slightly different shape and spacing compared to the 1988 version. The differences are subtle, but with side-by-side comparison, they become easier to see. Collectors often use magnifying glasses or digital microscopes to examine these details. If you suspect you have a rare variation, it's a good idea to compare it with verified images or have it evaluated by a professional grading service. Another important factor is condition. Coins that have been heavily used in circulation tend to lose detail over time. Scratches, wear, and discoloration can reduce their value significantly. On the other hand, coins that have been preserved in near-perfect condition, with sharp details and minimal marks, are much more valuable. This is why collectors often talk about grades. A coin graded as mint state can be worth many times more than the same coin in worn condition. But beyond value, there are also some interesting facts about the 1988 penny that many people don't know. For example, even though pennies are often seen as low-value coins, they are among the most widely produced coins in U.S. history. In 1988 alone, billions of pennies were minted across different facilities. Another surprising detail is that it actually costs more than 1 cent to produce a penny. This has been true for many years, leading to ongoing debates about whether the U.S. should stop making pennies altogether. And yet, despite their low face value, pennies continue to capture the imagination of collectors. There's something about the idea that a tiny coin could hold hidden value that keeps people searching through jars, drawers, and old collections. The 1988 no-mint mark penny is a perfect example of this phenomenon. It's a coin that almost everyone has seen, but very few have truly examined. Collectors love this coin not because it's rare in general, but because of what it represents. It represents the possibility of discovery. The idea that even in a sea of ordinary coins, there might be something special waiting to be found. It also reflects a moment in history when the U.S. Mint was transitioning materials and refining designs. These small changes, often unnoticed by the public, create opportunities for errors and variations that become valuable over time. And for collectors, that's the thrill. It's not just about money. It's about the hunt, the knowledge, and the connection to history. Imagine going through a handful of old pennies and suddenly spotting something different. A slight variation, a tiny detail that others might miss. In that moment, you're not just holding a coin. You're holding a piece of a story that spans decades, so the next time you come across a 1988 penny with no mint mark, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Examine the details. Compare the design. Because while most of these coins are common, a few of them carry secrets that could make them truly special. And that's the beauty of coin collecting. It turns everyday objects into mysteries. It transforms loose change into potential treasure. And it reminds us that sometimes, the most ordinary things can hold the most unexpected value. So now the question is simple. How many 1988 pennies have you already passed by, without ever realizing what they might be? What if the next penny you find in your pocket isn't just spare change, but a hidden piece of history that millions of people overlook every single day? A coin so common at first glance, yet quietly holding details that could make it far more interesting, and sometimes far more valuable, than you ever imagined. Today, we're talking about the 2000 no-mint mark Lincoln penny. A coin that many people have seen, many have spent, but very few have truly understood. At first glance, the 2000 Lincoln penny looks completely ordinary. It's small, copper-colored, and features the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln on the front. You've probably handled dozens, maybe hundreds of them over the years without even thinking twice. But behind that ordinary appearance is a story tied to American history, modern minting practices, and a few surprising details that collectors pay close attention to. To understand this coin, we need to go back to the year 2000. This was a time when the United States was stepping into a new millennium. Technology was rapidly evolving, the internet was expanding, and there was a general sense of excitement about the future. The U.S. Mint continued its long-standing tradition of producing the Lincoln cent, a coin that had been in circulation since 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln. The Lincoln penny itself was revolutionary when it first appeared. It was the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure instead of symbolic imagery. Designed by Victor David Brenner, the obverse or front shows a detailed profile of Lincoln, while the reverse used in the year 2000 still featured the Lincoln Memorial, which had been introduced in 1959. Now here's where things get interesting. When we say no mint mark, many people immediately think it means something rare or missing. But in reality, a 2000 penny with no mint mark simply means it was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. For many years, coins from Philadelphia did not carry a mint mark at all. Unlike coins from Denver, which use a D, or San Francisco, which use an S. So technically, the 2000 no mint mark penny isn't rare just because it lacks a mint mark. In fact, millions of these coins were produced. But that doesn't mean all of them are equal. Let's talk about the physical features. The 2000 Lincoln penny is made primarily of zinc with a thin copper coating. This composition has been standard since 1982, when the U.S. Mint switched from mostly copper to reduce production costs. The coin weighs about 2.5 grams and has a diameter of 19 millimeters. On the front, you'll see Lincoln's profile facing right, along with the inscriptions "In God We Trust" above, "Liberty" to the left, and the year 2000 to the right. On coins from Philadelphia, there's no mint mark under the date, which is exactly what we're focusing on today. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial stands tall, with the words "United States of America" and "E Pluribus Unum" above, and 1 cent below. If you look closely enough, you can even see a tiny representation of Lincoln sitting inside the memorial, a detail many people never notice. Now, here's where collectors start to pay closer attention. While most 2000 no-mint mark pennies are worth only face value, certain versions of this coin can be surprisingly valuable due to errors, condition, and rarity within specific categories. One of the biggest factors is condition. Coins that have never been circulated, known as uncirculated coins, can be worth significantly more than those that have been used in everyday transactions. Even more valuable are coins graded at the highest levels, such as MS 67 or MS 68, where the coin appears nearly flawless under magnification. Then there are mint errors. This is where things get truly exciting. Some 2000 no-mint mark pennies have been discovered with striking errors, including off-center strikes, double dies, and die cracks. These imperfections occur during the minting process and make each error coin unique. For example, a double die error happens when the design is stamped more than once in slightly different positions, creating a noticeable doubling effect on letters or numbers. These coins can attract serious attention from collectors. There have been instances where high-grade 2000 no-mint mark pennies or those with notable errors have sold for anywhere from a few dollars to over $100, depending on their uniqueness and condition. While this may not sound life-changing, it's a huge jump from a coin that most people consider worthless. So how do you know if you have one of these valuable pennies? First, check the date and confirm it says 2000. Then look directly under the date. If there is no letter, that means it was minted in Philadelphia. Next, examine the coin closely. Look for any unusual features, doubling in the text, misaligned designs, or strange marks that don't look like normal wear. Condition is also key. A shiny, clean coin with sharp details is far more desirable than one that's scratched or heavily worn. If you think your coin might be special, you can compare it with verified examples online or even have it evaluated by a professional grading service. One important thing to remember is that not every unusual-looking coin is valuable. Damage caused after the coin leaves the mint, like scratches, dents, or discoloration, does not increase its value. In fact, it usually decreases it. Here's a fun detail that many people don't realize. The Lincoln Memorial design on the reverse of the penny remained in use for over 50 years, making it one of the longest-running designs in U.S. coin history. That means your 2000 penny is part of a design era that connects multiple generations. Another interesting fact is that billions of pennies are produced each year, yet only a tiny fraction ever become collectible. It's not just about age. It's about rarity within that age, condition, and those small, often overlooked differences. Collectors love coins like the 2000 no-mint mark penny because they represent accessibility. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars to start collecting. You can begin by simply checking your pocket change. That sense of possibility, the idea that something valuable could be hiding in plain sight, is what makes coin collecting so exciting. There's also a deeper emotional connection. Coins pass through countless hands over time. Each one carries a silent history of where it's been and who has used it. When collectors hold a coin, they're not just holding metal, they're holding a small piece of a much larger story. Today, even in a world that's rapidly moving toward digital payments, coins like the 2000 Lincoln penny continue to capture attention. They remind us of a time when physical currency was part of everyday life in a more tangible way. And perhaps that's the real value of this coin. Not just what it might sell for, but what it represents. A connection between past and present, between ordinary people and hidden treasures. So the next time you come across a penny, don't ignore it. Take a closer look. Check the date. Look for that mint mark or the absence of one. You might just discover something you've never noticed before. Because sometimes, the most ordinary objects carry the most unexpected stories. And in the case of the 2000 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, that story might be sitting quietly in your pocket right now, waiting for you to finally see it. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and unknowingly holding a coin that could be worth far more than 1 cent. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary. But what if that tiny copper coin carries hidden details that collectors are actively searching for right now? Today, we're talking about the 2003 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. At first glance, it might seem like just another piece of loose change. Millions of these coins were produced, and many people overlook them every single day. But once you understand what makes this coin special, you may never look at your spare change the same way again. The 2003 Lincoln penny is part of a long-running series that began back in 1909, when the United States first honored President Abraham Lincoln on its coinage. By 2003, this design had already become one of the most recognized coins in American history. On the front, you see Lincoln's familiar profile, calm and dignified. On the back, you find the Lincoln Memorial, a symbol of unity and national pride. Now, here's where things get interesting. When a coin has no mint mark, it simply means it was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. Unlike other mints like Denver or San Francisco, Philadelphia traditionally did not include a mint mark on pennies for many years. So, the absence of a mint mark on a 2003 penny is not an error by itself. It is normal. But that does not mean every 2003 no mint mark penny is equal. In 2003, billions of pennies were minted in Philadelphia. That might make you think these coins are extremely common and not worth your attention. And for the most part, that's true. Most of these pennies are only worth their face value. But within those billions of coins, there are small variations, hidden errors, and high-grade examples that can be worth far more than 1 cent. Let's take a closer look at the coin itself. The 2003 Lincoln penny is made primarily of zinc, with a thin copper coating. This composition has been used since 1982, when the U.S. Mint shifted away from mostly copper coins due to rising metal costs. The coin weighs about 2.5 grams and has a smooth edge on the front, or obverse. You'll see Abraham Lincoln facing right. Above his head is the word liberty, and to the right, the phrase "In God We Trust." The date 2003 appears just in front of his chest. On coins from Philadelphia, you won't see any mint mark below the date, which is why they're called no mint mark pennies. On the reverse side, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial. If you look very closely, you can even see a tiny representation of Lincoln's statue sitting inside the memorial. It's a detail so small that many people never notice it. So if millions of these coins exist, what makes some of them valuable? The answer lies in condition and errors. First, let's talk about condition. Most 2003 pennies you find in circulation are worn down. They've been passed from hand to hand, scratched, faded, and dulled over time. But a small number of these coins were preserved in near-perfect condition. These are known as uncirculated coins, and the best of the best are graded as mint state 65, 66, or even higher. A 2003 no mint mark penny in average condition might only be worth 1 cent. But in high mint state condition, it can sell for several dollars, sometimes even more depending on its quality. Collectors are willing to pay a premium for coins that look as fresh and clean as the day they were minted. Now let's talk about something even more exciting: errors. Error coins are where things get really interesting. These are coins that were struck incorrectly during the minting process. Even small mistakes can make a coin much more valuable. One type of error to look for is a double die. This happens when the design is stamped onto the coin more than once, slightly misaligned. As a result, certain letters or numbers may appear doubled. For example, you might notice doubling in the word liberty or in the date. Another error is an off-center strike. This occurs when the coin is not properly aligned during minting, causing part of the design to be missing. Depending on how dramatic the misalignment is, these coins can be highly collectible. There are also die cracks and die chips. These appear as raised lines or blobs on the coin, caused by damage to the minting equipment. While some of these are minor, others are quite noticeable and can add value. In some rare cases, you may even find a broad strike error, where the coin was struck without the collar that normally holds it in place. This results in a coin that looks wider and flatter than usual. Now, let's talk about real-world value. While most 2003 no mint mark pennies are not rare, certain examples have sold for surprising amounts. For instance, a high-grade 2003 penny graded mint state 67 has sold for over $100 at auction. That's a huge jump from 1 cent. And error coins can go even higher. A well-defined double die or a dramatic off-center strike could fetch anywhere from $50 to several $100s, depending on the severity and condition. It's important to understand that these high values are not for average coins. The difference between a common penny and a valuable one often comes down to tiny details that only careful inspection can reveal. So how can you tell if your 2003 penny is worth more than face value? Start by checking the date and mint mark. Look for 2003 and confirm there is no mint mark under the date. That tells you it's from Philadelphia. Next, examine the condition. Is the coin shiny and clean, or dull and worn? Are the details sharp, or are they fading away? The better the condition, the higher the potential value. Then, look closely for errors. Use a magnifying glass if you have one. Check the lettering, the date, and the edges. Look for anything unusual like doubling, misalignment, or strange markings. Also, be aware of damage. Scratches, corrosion, or cleaning can reduce a coin's value significantly. A coin that has been polished might look shiny, but collectors usually prefer original surfaces. One important thing to remember is that fake coins are extremely rare for modern pennies like this. It's simply not worth the effort for counterfeiters. However, altered coins do exist. Some people try to create fake errors by damaging coins intentionally. That's why it's important to learn what genuine mint errors look like. Here's a fun fact that surprises many people. Even though the Lincoln Memorial design was used for decades, it was replaced just a few years later. In 2009, to celebrate Lincoln's 200th birthday, the U.S. Mint introduced new reverse designs. Then, in 2010, the penny received a completely new back design featuring the Union Shield. That means the 2003 penny is part of the final years of the Lincoln Memorial era, giving it a bit of historical significance. Another interesting detail is how many of these coins are still out there. Because they are so common, many people ignore them. But that also means valuable examples can still be found in circulation, coin rolls, or old jars of spare change. It's like a quiet treasure hunt hiding in plain sight. Collectors love coins like the 2003 no mint mark penny because they combine accessibility with possibility. Anyone can find one, but not everyone knows what to look for. That gap between common and valuable is what makes coin collecting so exciting. There's also a sense of connection to history. Every penny has passed through countless hands, witnessing everyday life in a way few objects can. Even a modern coin carries a story, from the moment it was struck to the journey it has taken over the years. For beginners, this coin is a perfect starting point. It teaches you how to observe details, understand condition, and recognize errors. For experienced collectors, it offers the thrill of finding a rare variation among millions of ordinary coins. And perhaps the most exciting part is this. The next valuable penny could already be in your possession. It might be sitting in a drawer, hiding in a coin jar, or waiting in your pocket right now. So the next time you come across a 2003 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, don't just spend it without a second thought. Take a closer look. Turn it under the light. Study the details. Because sometimes, the smallest and most overlooked objects can hold the biggest surprises. And who knows? That simple penny you almost ignored might just be the one that changes how you see coins forever. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a single penny, and unknowingly holding something that could be worth far more than 1 cent. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary, but what if that small copper coin carries hidden details that most people overlook every single day? Today, we're uncovering the story behind the 2007 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that quietly sits in circulation while collectors search for the rare versions that could be worth real money. The 2007 D Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced at the Denver Mint, which is why it carries the small D Mint mark just below the date on the front of the coin. At first glance, it doesn't look very different from any other modern penny. It features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. Millions of these coins were produced, and they continue to circulate today, often going unnoticed. To understand why this coin matters, we need to go back to its place in history. The Lincoln penny itself has been around since 1909, introduced to celebrate the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln. By 2007, the The design had already been in use for nearly a century. The coin you're looking at represents the final years of the classic Lincoln Memorial reverse design before it was changed in 2009 for the bicentennial celebration of Lincoln's birth. That makes the 2007 penny part of the closing chapter of a long-running design. It may not seem significant at first, but collectors often pay attention to these end-of-era coins. They represent the final opportunity to capture a design that defined generations. Now let's talk about what makes this specific coin unique. The 2007 Lincoln penny is made primarily of zinc with a thin copper coating. This composition has been used since 1982, when rising copper prices forced the U.S. Mint to switch materials. While older pennies were made mostly of copper, modern ones like the 2007 version are lighter and more cost-effective to produce. The design on the front, known as the obverse, shows Abraham Lincoln's profile, originally created by Victor David Brenner. You'll see the word Liberty to the left, the year 2007 to the right, and above Lincoln's head, the motto "In God We Trust." Just below the date is the small but important D mint mark, indicating it was struck in Denver. On the reverse, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, a detailed depiction of the famous monument in Washington, D.C. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny image of Lincoln seated inside the memorial, a detail many people never noticed. So if millions were made, why would anyone consider this coin valuable? The answer lies in condition, errors, and collector demand. While most 2007 pennies are worth only 1 cent, certain versions can be worth significantly more. Coins that are in pristine, uncirculated condition, especially those graded by professional services, can sell for higher prices simply because they are harder to find in perfect shape. But the real excitement comes from minting errors. These are mistakes made during the production process, and they can turn an ordinary coin into something special. For the 2007 penny, collectors have reported several types of errors, including double dies, off-center strikes, and die cracks. A double die error occurs when the coin's design is stamped more than once, slightly misaligned. This creates a noticeable doubling effect on letters or numbers. If you spot doubling on the date or inscriptions, you could be holding a coin that collectors actively seek. Off-center strikes are another fascinating error. These happen when the coin blank is not properly aligned during the minting process, causing part of the design to be missing or shifted. The more dramatic the error, the more valuable the coin can be. Die cracks and cuds, which appear as raised lines or blobs on the coin surface, can also increase value, especially if they are large or visually striking. Now let's look at real-world value. A standard circulated 2007 penny is usually worth face value. But uncirculated examples, especially those graded MS-65 or higher, can sell for several dollars. That may not sound like much, but for a 1-cent coin, it's already a significant increase. Error coins are where things get interesting. Some 2007 pennies with clear double die features or major striking errors have sold for anywhere from $20 to over $100, depending on the rarity and condition. In rare cases, exceptional error coins can fetch even higher prices at auctions or through private collectors. So how can you tell if you have one of these valuable coins? Start by examining the mint mark. Look just below the date and confirm that there is a small D. Next, inspect the coin closely under good lighting. A magnifying glass can be very helpful. Look for unusual features such as doubling in the letters, misaligned designs, or any irregular shapes. Check the condition as well. Coins with sharp details, no scratches, and a bright, original surface are more desirable. Avoid cleaning the coin, as this can reduce its value. Collectors prefer coins in their natural state, even if they show some age. If you believe you've found something special, consider having it evaluated by a professional coin grading service. They can authenticate the coin, assign it a grade, and help determine its market value. There are also a few surprising facts about the 2007 Lincoln penny that many people don't know. For example, even though it's a modern coin, it represents the last full years of the Lincoln Memorial design before the U.S. Mint introduced 4 new reverse designs in 2009 to celebrate different stages of Lincoln's life. Another interesting detail is that despite being made mostly of zinc, these coins are still coated in copper, giving them that classic penny appearance. However, over time, the copper coating can wear off, revealing the dull gray zinc underneath. Coins that retain their original red copper color are often more valuable to collectors. Collectors also enjoy searching through rolls of pennies, a hobby known as coin roll hunting. The 2007 D penny is often part of this search, not because every coin is valuable, but because the thrill lies in finding that one rare piece hidden among hundreds of ordinary ones. What makes this coin truly appealing today is its accessibility. Unlike rare coins that are locked away in collections or museums, the 2007 D Lincoln penny is still out there. Could be in your change, in a jar at home, or even lying unnoticed on the ground. That possibility keeps collectors engaged and curious. There's also something meaningful about holding a coin that represents the closing years of a historic design. It connects the present to the past, reminding us of how everyday objects can carry stories across generations. In the end, the 2007 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny may not seem extraordinary at first glance. It's small, common, and often overlooked. But within that simplicity lies the potential for discovery. Whether it's a rare error, a perfectly preserved specimen, or simply a piece of history, this coin has more to offer than most people realize. So the next time you come across a penny, don't ignore it. Take a closer look, because hidden among the ordinary could be something truly unexpected, waiting to be found.